Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and I had just gotten into the video that you'll be seeing next, where I was putting together a bunch of aluminum pieces, panels, 4 of them. Well, actually 5th if you count the top. And I realized that I was going to have a lot of aluminum welding to do. And as you know, I do a lot of my aluminum welding with the oxyacetylene. So I figured this would be a good time to show you how I'm going to take my standard Cobra Hen-Rob torch and lighten it up considerably. A lot of the people that I have talked to about the Hen-Rob torch, they say they like the way it welds, which they should, because of the mixing chamber that they utilize, that they've developed. Actually Dillon, way back in Australia. So the one complaint that they have is the weight. So what I'm going to do in this video is take a regular torch. This is the one that I've been using for many, many years. I'm going to take this one here that I used to do the demos at different car shows all over the United States for many, many years when I was selling the Cobra torch. So I have here a torch that I have cut away a lot of this portion up here just to show the mixing chamber, which is the selling point of this particular torch. The main drawback to the torch is this big blob of brass that's down at the bottom where the hoses come in and the knobs are, and this portion here, which is the cutting side of the torch. There's a trigger here. There's a passage to the oxygen side of the torch where you adjust it. It comes up. You can trigger the cutting portion, and that feeds this. And this is totally a separate segment of the torch. So with that being said, trying to figure out another adjusting mechanism, I guess you could say, to make this whole bottom portion lighter. I've looked at a lot of different torches that I've had over the years, and none of them will afford themselves the opportunity to be modified to replace this whole cast brass segment. So what I've decided to do is cut away the majority of the brass in the bottom portion and in the cutting torch portion. Do away with that altogether, and that will reduce a lot of the weight. So with that being said, let's get down close here and we'll see how I'm going to be removing a lot of brass, both in the torch here, and here, and I'm going to actually do some lightning holes in the aluminum handle also. And I'll have to figure out how how I can do that and still use the pistol grip. I still want to use the aluminum handle in this present configuration, but be just much, much lighter. Okay, so here we have the, the 2 torches and the cutaway. This torch here is the one that I've used here in my shop for many, many years. And I'm not going to mess with it. I do have a project coming up that requires a lot of welding aluminum. And so I don't want to take a chance on whatever I do here to mess this thing up. So I'm going to set this one aside. This one here is the one I used for many, many years when I was selling the Cobra torch. I took this to car shows all over the United States, both car shows and blacksmithing conferences. And I've sold a bunch of these all over the United States. And this one here, obviously, as you can see, is a cutaway. So I can show the oxygen in through the center here and the acetylene that goes through this outer chamber. And this is the main thing that makes the Cobra torch so much better than the Victor, Harris, or Smith. So before we get started, let's weigh this torch as it is with nothing being done. The only thing that is missing on this is obviously the hoses, and it doesn't have a tip. But other than that, this is exactly how this torch would be used. So here we have the scale zeroed. Put the torch on here, and as it is, just as you would be using a torch in your shop, it weighs 1 pound, 8.2 ounces. So that is our starting point. Let's see what we wind up with. So this is going to be quite a handy piece to be referencing. The main thing that I'm going to be removing is this cutting portion with the valve, and the majority of this brass here, except where the handle needs a reference point in here. I'm going to cut all of this away, and most of these bumps here. So that should cut quite a bit of weight away, especially in this portion here. So with the cutting portion, you can see that the acetylene comes through right here, fairly close. So what I'm going to do is cut right along there, come up and over, and I'm going to remove this whole bulbous area right there. And obviously this line here, that's the trigger for cutting. One of the first things I'm going to do is de-silver solder this block away from here. And you'll see that way later. It'll be one of the first things I do so I can get started on this. But I'm not sure whether I'll show that part or not, because it's going to take quite a while heating this area and get all of those all 3 tubes off at the same time. That might be kind of messy, but I am not afraid. So once I get this block off of here, I have to be concerned with two things. One, how the oxygen comes through here, and then there must be a hole drilled to this port here. And this is obviously the oxygen port. The second thing is, if I stick a probe in there, go all the way to the bottom, and then bring this out, it looks like that might break this surface. The hole may come deeper, be drilled deeper than the surface here. So I'm going to have to leave this little bump alone. And all I'm going to do is draw myself a circle around there, like that. Remove all of this. I can go all the way up to the threads here. So I can remove a bunch of this stuff on both sides. That's going to save a lot of weight. I don't want to abuse this area here and here. Yeah, probably on both sides. I know the oxygen side, this one here, I know there's a hole somewhere in here. So I'm going to have to plug that in some way. So what this is probably going to look like, I want to keep the handle. I want to use the aluminum handle. By removing this, that's not going to do very much in regards to making the handles sloppy, the aluminum handles sloppy on there, because this does come around and it keeps quite tight in there. And I noticed on the inside it comes very close to this nut here also. So what I want to do is mark here, which will be somewhere around here. I'll look to see how wide the little flange is in here that maintains that. So I might have an area about like that. So with knowing that I need to leave that area and I need to leave an area here that will mimic that shape there under the plastic or under the aluminum, I can remove everything from here, there, all the way up there, being mindful of where this tube is coming through. I can also remove all of this. It only needs to be just enough material left for the tube to be silver soldered to. All of this is going to be removed. I can also cut up here all the way to that line. So this can be a void. This will be a large void. A lot of this material will be removed. A lot of this material will be removed. And all of the cutting material will be removed here and there. So by thinning all of these places out, I think I'm going to save quite a bit of weight. So let me get the handle off of here. That won't take very long. Now you can see right there is a mark where it's been rubbing that portion right there. So we know that the handle is fairly tight. That won't allow it to go fore and aft. Also, this nub here goes right in between there. That'll keep it fairly stable. This one here goes in here. So let's see how much these two pieces weigh separately. So first, let's weigh the aluminum handle, and that is 7.0 ounces. And the torch alone, that weighs in at 1 pound, 2.6 ounces. So now that we have our starting weights, let's get to cutting. In order to pull this portion off of the rest of the torch, obviously I'm going to have to use some heat. Got my torch all set up. I have to melt all three of these tubes, melt the silver solder on all three of these tubes. And luckily, I looked in my rack of tongs, which I just have a small portion of them in the shop here. I made this pair here many years ago to hold 1/4-inch square but longer pieces. And this thing just happens to hold onto there just great. And luckily, I have my tong ring already affixed. So all I do is squeeze it, put it in one of these notches, and I don't have to hold it. And this is how that goes. I get that so it's nice and tight. I squeeze the reins. My tong ring is hooked onto the end of the rein. So now I can manipulate that without having to hold on to the tongs themselves. So let me move the camera in closer so we can watch right down in here. Hopefully we'll be able to see the silver solder become molten, and then I can pull this off. And there you have it. I'll have to clean off some of this silver solder, I'm sure, so it will, all three of them will fit back in here. So we know that this one here, which is for the cutting, goes quite deep, way down in here somewhere. So somewhere they've made a hole down in here, and then one probably at some weird angle to intersect that center hole. Okay, now that we have the two parts separated, I thought it might be a neat little exercise to see what they weigh individually, so we can see exactly how much weight has been removed after doing all the carving. So let's get these weighed. Okay, the top part weighs 0.9 or 9.2 ounces, I guess that is. No pounds, 9.2 ounces. And the bottom part, which I think is going to be the most weight that we remove on this little exercise here, it weighs 6 ounces exactly. So it'll be very interesting to see how much weight is removed from this. I'm thinking I can get this down to maybe 3 ounces. Just by looking at it, it looks like I can remove half of its weight. So what I want to see next is where this passage goes. This is the one that is for the cutting circuit. So all of this piece, all of this is going to be removed, but I need to know how it's getting the oxygen through that cutting circuit from this opening here. So that goes down that far. So it's a little bit below the hole here. So there's got to be another hole that is drilled this way. I don't know how they can get... there we go. That's it. They drilled through this way at an angle that far. I see what they did. Okay, they went in at an angle here, and then they drilled down here this way. So this bisects somewhere in here. So that's good to know. So what I think I can do is when I remove all of this weight, I can drill and tap this hole and just put a Allen screw in there and block this passage off that goes from here over to here. Now that's interesting. I'm glad I looked at this to see what the passageway is in here. So let's get these pieces cleaned up and start removing material. Well, now that I have removed all of the material, I just got finished removing this little segment in here. I want to drill several lightning holes in the handles, both of them. And I removed just a little bit of weight down here at the bottom. I don't know that that'll make a difference, but now that I've got everything removed that I can with the mill, the one hole that came through the oxygen and bisected the hole for the oxygen cutting trigger. Once I get this all massaged and the shape that I want, I'm going to have to silver solder a little patch over that one protrusion. No, it would be Well, the hole would be protruding into that center section for the cutting. So next thing to do is get over there on the table and start removing more material. I'm not going to show that. I'll show you when I get done. I'll show you what I've done, and we'll weigh everything and see what the difference is. I'm not going to show this whole portion because I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be running all over the shop trying different methods of removing material. So with that, let's get to grinding. So now I have all of the parts lightened as much as I can, and we're about ready to do the silver soldering and reassembly. But first, I bet you're wondering how I arrived at all of the holes that I put in the handle. I first drilled 7 half-inch holes, and that looked just ridiculous. That was a odd number of holes for anything, really. So I decided that just to make this ludicrous, I could drill 10 more holes in it. So that's what I did. So now that all the parts are finished being hand refined, the next thing to do is to weigh each of the parts individually, compare those to how they were stock, and then we'll do the silver soldering. So let me get the scale out, get these things weighed, and then we can get to the silver soldering. So first, let's weigh the handles, see what the difference is between the stock and with all of the holes. We are at 4.9 ounces. So I'm thinking that is a pretty good weight savings. Next is the bottom portion. This is where the adjusters go, and that now weighs 3.2 ounces. And the main torch body, that now weighs 5.6 ounces. The next thing I've got to do is, you can see this hole here that used to feed the cutting portion, which has all been removed here. The first thing I got to do is just put a small patch on that, and then I can silver solder these two pieces together. So here you can see how much has actually been removed. All of the cutting mechanism that goes all the way down into here, this is all gone. Where the two tubes are silver soldered in here, a bunch of this block has been removed, and all of this portion down in here. So you can see that we've removed a lot of weight from the original. And right here, you can see where the oxygen hole that was bored, I had to fill that and then re-silver solder all of the parts in there. Let me turn the scale on. And this portion complete is 8.6 ounces. So let me get this whole thing assembled like this. Now this one, I just got finished silver soldering all of this. So this is exactly how the torch would be used. All I did was disconnect here and took the tip off, and that's it. So let me get the handles back on here, and we'll weigh this as a complete unit ready to start welding. So here we have the lightweight torch all assembled, ready to go. I'll probably start welding with this probably later this week, and it weighs in at 1 pound 2.5 ounces. The original one close to what, over £1.8 would be 16 ounces is a pound, so that's half. That's 1.5 pounds right there. 1.5 pounds as opposed to £1. So I've taken almost 0.5 pound off of this thing, and I think that will lend itself quite nicely if I'm welding many inches of aluminum is what I usually use this thing for. So I'm sure that the time that I've spent is going to be well worth the time to make this thing 0.5 pound lighter. So I have given a lot of numbers about the weight loss of this particular torch as I've been removing material. The one thing that I can't really put across is what a difference this torch is now. You pick this up and yes, everybody that says the Cobra torch is way too heavy, I've pretty much just said, well, that's, if you like the way it welds, then you have to deal with the weight, which is true. But you do have the opportunity, I guess you could say, to do just what I did. Remove a lot of the brass. I know a lot of people like this torch because of its ability to weld aluminum nice and clean. I'm going to enjoy the heck out of this thing. I have before, with the original weight, I used to hold it like this, so the weight was down below and I could get fairly close to what I was wanting to weld. Very seldom have I ever used it as a pistol grip. When I would use like a number 2 or a number 3 tip, especially when I was welding a lot of cast iron, I would hold it way back here, mainly by the hose, just to get away from all of that heat. And that worked for many years with this torch. I don't know that I would use this one for welding cast iron. I know I'd give it a try because I have this one. This torch now that I've removed all the weight, this is going to be a pleasure to use. Now, I went through all of the numbers and I see that the amount that I removed from this is almost a half a pound. I am 1.5 ounce shy of removing half a pound from this torch. So if you have a friend that, or if you know anybody that has a Hen-Rob torch, this video is something that you should have them see. It wasn't that much work. If you're capable, if you're ballsy enough to take something like this on, where you have to un-silver solder some areas, do a lot of grinding, and then silver solder everything back together, you're handy enough to do that if you even think about approaching a task such as this. So with all of that said, anybody that has a Cobra torch and you complain that it's too heavy, I hate to use the word complain, if it's too heavy, do something about it. If you know somebody that has a torch, let them know that they don't have to be stuck with their old heavy torch. You can do something about it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you got a lot of information out of this video. If you did, buy me a coffee. That would be just great. If I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next one.